All right, let's talk about making the offer to a private seller. Completely different environment. Remember, I talked about in the video that I recorded at my desk there, where I talked about the fork in the road. We're going to talk about the fork in the road. So this vacant house comes to us by by way of our bird dog, or we find it ourselves, and now we go look at the public record to see who owns it. It is right there that we reach the fork in the road. It's either owned by a bank or it's owned by a private seller. And they're very different in what they expect. With a private seller, you can use an assignable agreement. And you can take any purchase and sale agreement and make it assignable. There's a couple ways you can do that. When you make your offer, the buyer is you or your LLC and or assigns. How many of you have heard of that? That's out of Robert Allen's book from the 80s. The problem is that is, in my opinion, an antiquated strategy. And when you're dealing with a private seller, if you put, John Smith and or assigns with a unsophisticated seller, that might freak them out. And with a sophisticated seller, that might freak them out. The sophisticated seller says, what's this about? Are you going to buy this house or not? The unsophisticated seller says, well, it says you and Ass-ines. Is that some friend of yours? Ass-ines? Who's that? And they really ought to change their name. What I'd rather have is an agreement that makes no mention of assignability whatsoever. It's not even in it anywhere. And do you know, by contract law, an agreement that it does not address assignability one way or the other is automatically and by default assignable. Did you know that? Ooh, that was a tidbit then, huh? There's one of those pearls. When a purchase and sale agreement, any contract for that matter, says it is assignable, then it is. When it says it isn't assignable, then it isn't. When it doesn't say anything about assignment, it is by default assignable. So take it out. Now, if you're working with your realtor's agreement, you may not get an editable version of that. I don't know, maybe you're an expert and you can crack a PFD, no problem, or a PDF file, no problem. But take it out. If you have the ability to edit the agreement, go to the paragraph that addresses assignments and delete it. Most realtors agreements say this agreement is not assignable unless to by all parties herein. The FAR agreement used to say, maybe it still does, and I'd be interested if it does if you know, it used to have a paragraph that says this agreement is, and a checkbox, and then it would say is not, and a checkbox, assignable. Does it still say that? I haven't used the FAR in a while. Nobody knows. It is that way, Denny? Okay. So in that case, you have no choice but to address it. Leaving it blank doesn't make it assignable. It leaves the contract incomplete. So check is. And then here's something interesting, and you can take this for what it's worth. In the commercial world, all contracts are assignable. It says right in it, this agreement is assignable. However, it's made assignable not so that you can flip the thing, although it does make it flippable. It's assignable because when you make an offer on a commercial property, you probably haven't formed the entity that you intend to take title into yet until you have an agreement. So in the commercial world, everybody knows. They say, well, okay, you're making your offer, like, for example, this 200 and, I forget how many units it is. It's like 280 units, this mini storage complex I have under contract in North Carolina now. I made the offer in my own name. Good Lord, do you think I'm going to take title to that property in my own name? Heck no. But it's assignable. I will, probably this week, I'm going to form yet another LLC. So, anyway, when we're dealing with a private seller, we'd like our agreement to be assignable. And the seller says, why do you want it to be assignable? Tell them. I may not close on this. I may close in the name of an entity. I may have a friend close on it. I'm not sure. That just leaves my options open. Chances are they won't ask. Then we don't need my funding to close this thing. we can, and we're going to come to this, we can sell the contract to our buyer, right? We just sell it and we step out. They go and they close. We take our assignment fee and we're done. We're out. It's less expensive. You don't have to pay me for the use of my money. There's not exactly. There's no. You're not. You don't have two closings with two sets of closing costs. There's only one closing. When you're making an all-cash offer to the private seller, the likelihood of them wanting to see proof of funds is so remote it's crazy. So go ahead and make the all-cash offer. And by the way, if the seller asks you for proof of funds, I heard a great response to that. This won't work with a bank, but with a private seller it might. You could say something like, if they say, I want to see proof of funds, you could say, okay, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. It's a good response. I like that. Sort of a wise guy response, but this offer on my property is $140,000 cash. Do you think this annoying PETA is going to ask for proof of funds from that buyer? Yes, he is, because I'm a PETA. Do you know what a PETA is? It's an acronym. Figure it out. PITA. Okay. Pain in. Hey, I'm asking 160 for the thing. I'm accepting 140. I just paid $20,000 for a license to be a PETA. How quickly should we close? We covered this. We can close on the date of your choice. A fast closing isn't always what a private seller wants. You might say, come on, what seller doesn't want to close immediately? You'll be surprised. I've seen all kinds of scenarios. Contingencies, now you've got more opportunity to few in if you want, although if you don't need them, there's no point in putting them in there, but if you want some wiggle clauses, weasel clauses as they're sometimes referred to, you could get them in here. Earnest money deposit, weensy. Private seller, tiny little earnest money deposits, we talked about that. Proof of funds, not going to need it. If they ask for it, be a wise guy. You can fax or email the agreement. If the seller's out of town, do we need to get on an airplane and go get in front of them at the local Denny's and get their signature? No. Is a fax contract binding? Yes, it is. Will the closing agent want to get an original signature on it as part of the closing package? Yeah. Yeah, they'll just have the seller, sign it again. They'll put a second signature on it. So what? A fax or email agreement is binding. Email meaning they signed it, scanned it, and emailed it back to you. A lot of the realtors are using that digital signature thing now. That's binding. So there's absolutely no reason to ever even meet the seller if we don't want to. They could be across town and you could do it all by fax and phone and not go to the closing and never meet them. Which do you think is better? Meet and get to know them, go out to dinner and hang out with their kids, or not? Who has enough friends? Okay. You can certainly present it in person when you do. Remember, we're not signing a contract, we're okaying the paperwork. And we're not giving them an earnest money deposit to make this thing legal and binding, we're making it legitimate. When you have an agreement with the seller, do not wait to do this. Get it done. Don't procrastinate because there's some shark in your midst, like me,